Hi, I'm Divya.
Hi, I'm Karan. And this is
Thinking
On Thinking.
Welcome to this episode of Thinking on Thinking. Today I talked to Soumyadeep about a lot of different things. Everything from AI and creating content through AI to how AI works, what is GPU, what is CPU, and later into discussion about how all of this is going to change the content landscape. We hope you enjoy.
Hey, I'm Soumyadeep. I'm a co-founder and CTO at this company called Dashtool, where we are trying to make something like YouTube, but for comics. The idea is that anyone can come and make a comic, publish to our app, and then monetize through that, and people pay to consume your content.
What are you doing these days? What is exciting that's happening in your life?
So till date, we have been making content in an X style, and very recently we decided we are going to move to a more conventional comic style, which also interestingly enables far more kind of variation in the style. Firstly, like one of the things I'm doing, or all morning I spent on, was defining what a style is.
Oh, so what is a style? That is interesting.
I don't know, it's very hard, but I think a couple of things that we came up with, that it starts with a character. Is it a round face? Is it something in the mix? Is it a realistic, like a human variation, like an anime is a very conical character face usually, and then there is the eyes part. Is it a small eyes, lateral eyes, round eyes? The moment you make something round-eyed, it suddenly becomes younger age, things that I discovered, right? So that's one part of style. The other part of style that I discovered is the color palette, which is very obvious, like what color palette is being used. For example, something that, so we made a style which is a very Americanish, Marvelish style with round-eyed and all of that. And the content team that we have said, we make revenge romance. We can't make it in this. And then I was like, oh, makes sense. So, okay, let me figure out what does revenge romance style looks like. And then understood a bit, like there is a darker theme. It is a little more, the color palette is on the darker side, but you still want the ability to have characters which are varying. So that is another part, like color palette.
Do you guys also think about like background? And so like there are some elements that are rendering elements that you're already speaking, right? Like style and color and all of that. But like, do you guys think about background and spaces and all of that also?
Yeah, in the hierarchy of things that we can, I'll come to that. So after color palette, the next thing that we noticed is actually strokes, like how thick the strokes are, how thin the strokes are, how fine-grained the strokes are. Is it like a smudge kind of a stroke? Is it an actual stroke, like a, right? So those are the next things. And then we decided that we called something universe. For example, I also have to reduce this style definition to something that I can do from a AI model standpoint,
Okay.
right? So for that, I need to understand that, like what is the universe? For example, very interestingly, one of our models, we noticed that whenever you type a telephone, very simple, telephone or a phone, it will give you that
Rotary phone.
Rotary phone. It will give you that. And then like my content team keeps saying, I can't make modern content with this, or I have to make so much effort. And the moment you type any background, by default has a retro-ish background in that model. And then we are like, so that's what I call the universe. So now we also know that we have to make a universe that is modern. When someone says phone, by default, it has to be an iPhone at least, or a smartphone. Right?
So that is interesting, because you can't directly tell the AI model any of those things, right?
Correct.
Like you can't say, oh, this is a phone or this is not a phone. Or like when I say building, have these kind of facades and not like, this other kind of facade.
Yes.
Right? So you're like, I have to first translate, then I have to retranslate it so that the model can also understand.
Yeah, so correct. First, I need to understand, and then I need to align some 20 people to be able to do this. Because now that I know that what the world means, I will have to, so we fine-tune models to be able to do this, right? Now I need to create a data set out of this. And this data set generation is like, I have to find 3,000 images. And if I can't find them, what I do usually, I just increase the top of the funnel. I will throw 10,000 images and get a person or some way to just prune out images which don't pass my taste barrier. Like, and these are the metrics of my taste. So now I need to have those people who are looking at every image understand this language, universe, character shape, eyes shape, color palette, all of this. And this is so subjective and so tricky. It took me like 30 minutes to align my leadership then it has to go down that operational expertise.
It's very interesting, right? Because like for a artist or somebody who's been trained in art, they would be like much more familiar with the vocabulary, not just the words, but also like, what are the things to think about? So like, stroke weight, stroke nature, how flowy is it? Is it organic shapes? Is it angular shapes? All of that, right? Like we would be much more used to it. But like you've not done visual work before this at all, right?
Like if
Not
computer
at all.
vision is called visual work, then yes.
So what's like, if you think about yourself from like maybe 2 years ago to today, like how would you say your ability to look at, has it changed how you look at things?
Yeah, definitely.
Like just outside in the world, like, you're watching a movie and like, are you thinking about it differently?
I'm noticing more art for sure, if we define it as art. I'm noticing more nuances in like how people portray things, how Anurag Kashyap portrays a story versus how Sanjay Leela Bhansali portrays a story. I'm noticing them. The amount of content that I watch, and I have watched since I have grown up. I've grown up in a family where we used to watch movies every Friday and Saturday in a theater, right? I have those things registered, but now I can see them also, right?
You're classifying your data set internally.
Correct. Yeah. Like now I know that, okay, Kuch Hota Hai was this way because it was this way. Because now I can think of it that way because I have that vocabulary. Of course, I was noticing them. And since I have watched so much, data is there. Right?
Yeah.
So like that's definitely something that I have started noticing a lot. That is one very, very recent. Like last 3 days, I have been just fighting people on just to align that this is the style we have to run with this. We can't push it more. Because style is just one aspect of content, right? The core aspect at the end of the day, what we have noticed is that the user cares about the story.
Yeah.
Right? So style is a medium to tell the story. So it's not like a decision that once taken, it can't be changed or something like that. So like just have to run with something. But even for that, like you have to decide.
What are other people's sort of like, I want to say, philosophical alignments on the visual aspect? I'm sure everybody has different point of view, but still, like, what is it? Because everybody has some sort of idea of like, this is where narrative fits and this is where like the visual fits and like this is how we wanna as a brand. Because like regardless of how many stories you guys have, still you wanna build your identity also. Right? Like somebody looks at your content and they're like, oh, this is from Dash 2.
I think that's not a super important thing at this point.
Okay.
We are very style and stories and characters. These are ephemeral things. We will keep shape shifting, experimenting new things. So there's nothing that we think this is what our brand is. I would like to believe that what the brand we want to be is that we just offer so much variety that is the differentiation. That is the brand that I want to build. Like I just want to offer variety.
But that's not possible, right? Like even if you look at like, let's say something like Instagram where people put all kinds of content, like especially because these days I'm like using Twitter and Instagram and Threads, like not a lot, but like, I'm using all three equally. I can tell that like there's just a vibe difference. Threads and Twitter, despite being text medium, despite being short form text medium, there is still like a vibe difference. People are talking about everything and anything, but just like Threads, people are sharing more stories, they're more chill, and Twitter, everybody is trying to make you angry.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's true. So when I mean everything, I mean, okay, here's how I stack rank this way, right? You can go to Webtoon and read comics. You can go to Netflix and watch movies. What is it that Dashtune or any new AI first content platform should be able to give you, right? It is the ability to do things that wasn't possible before. And we can break them down into many parts. One of the things is just production speed, which is something that like we are doing, right? So that is one. The second thing is that the ability to do kind of styles that was just like not possible at the same production speed, right? You could not do let's look at some game like style, right? Ghost of Tsushima, right? That style at the same production speed of a comic is just impossible at some point of time before AI, right? And that is something that we would want to unlock, right? That's when I mean that we want to be the brand that just unlocks things that people have not seen before. Like most of our content right now, if you ever open the app, has a very gamey or a 3D-ish style to it because we thought that is something people have not seen. Now we are deciding that okay, let's go deeper into the 2D genre and not into the 3D genre because heck, why not? It's just Like there is no math here. We're just trying out things and seeing what works.
A lot of it is just taste oriented, and I feel like, at least for me personally, that's where media industries are like a little more earnest and honest, and like all the other industries try to, like most industries try to present themselves as essential, but like almost nothing is essential, right? Like if somebody decides that, oh, I want to go to space, like that's also not essential. It's also a taste based decision. Like it fascinates me, I want to go underwater, like again, it fascinates you. Or I want to make cars, like everything is one of those things, right? But like I just feel like media is much more honest about that fact that yeah, I'm doing it because I want to do it, not because like this is the quote unquote correct thing to do.
It's more taste based. So of course it has to be because when I want to
think everything is taste based. Right. I just think that people in media are a little more honest about the fact that it's all taste based. I mean, okay, like let's say we know a lot of people who are making like AI products, right? Almost all of them are chasing their own curiosity and interest. Like they're not really chasing, sure, there is market gap, like there might be some demand, all of that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But that is true for a Marvel movie also. That is true for like an animated movie also. Like there's some market demand for these kind of things, right? Like, I don't know, like I just find it interesting that like just going from tech to media, I have found it interesting that at least people here are more willing to own up to the fact that this is a whim, while everybody in the tech and startup world tries to say, no, this is the logically correct thing to do. And it's like, bro, it's not. Like there is no logically correct thing.
Yeah, interesting. Isn't that true for most consumer products? It is a taste based.
Correct.
I think we have to, like the way I look at the world is consumer products are far more taste than enterprise product. Enterprise product is a far more need of some kind.
It's a different vocabulary of certain like scale and all of that, but I still think it is a taste based thing. Like why are processes the way they are in big organizations? Because somebody decided that, oh, this feels better to me, and then they came up with motivated reasoning to prove those things. It's like, half of it might be logic, but orientation, or rather, I would say the sort of magnitude part of it can be logic, but the directionality part of that vector is always taste. Like, where do I want to orient myself?
Makes sense, I think. Yeah, true. Interesting. Yeah, I guess, everything, at least the ideation definitely comes from some taste view of the world. Then people can rationalize through data, through process, through emotion, whatever works for them.
Interesting. Yeah. So, like, let's say we are 5 years in the future. You guys are doing really well. You have, a lot of audience, all of that. What kind of stories would you want to tell?
Again, I don't see myself or even Dashtone as a platform where I control the narrative. Like, I don't want to be that. Ideally.
Correct. But like what kind of stories would you want to tell? Like it enables everything, and if money were not a matter, what would you want to tell?
I don't know. Like firstly, I don't personally think that I want to decide what stories to tell. I want people to tell their stories and find their own niche audiences. That is how I would look at it. Like personally, like if you say that if I am a creator, what stories I want to tell, or what I mean, then like educational content is what I would like to create as a creator. Like one of the greatest things that I have felt value for myself is when someone can distill really complex things in ways that some people can understand really, really well in less time or less effort, right? I would want to do that.
Like 3 Blue 1 Brown.
Yeah, 3 Blue 1 Brown is a great example, and with some lens, like 3 Blue 1 Brown and this primer does it through some data simulation type of a lens. I'm okay looking at it from a person teaching kind of a lens also, but they have to be a great teacher. And I think there is a lot of skill and depth needed to do this. And most people don't do a good job. That is something that I would want to do if I personally become a creator. Explain computer networks in a way that most people don't understand and most people should understand. Like explain, very recently I was explaining GPUs, like why GPU versus CPU to someone in a way that that most people have not thought about it that way. It builds a mental model that lets you expand what a GPU can do.
What is the explanation? You can't make so much context and then not give the explanation.
It's not that complex. The simple thing is that the mental model is that what a GPU does is it throws throughput to obfuscate latency. That's it.
More explanation.
So the idea is that everything in the world, remove GPUs. Everything in the world where we use anything that increases throughput is to obfuscate latency. Like in a restaurant, when you go, right, you put 4 people there, so that your wait time reduces. What you're doing actually is doing this. You're increasing throughput to reduce latency for the end user. That's exactly what a GPU does. GPU is something that is going to do 1,000 jobs, the same job, very fast for the end user to reduce latency.
Right. That's why GPUs tend to have many more cores than like a CPU
Correct.
might.
Yes. But the moment you ask GPUs to make a lot of decisions, it is going to slow you down. The GPU is designed for throughput. It is not designed for decision making. CPU is designed
It's
for decision.
almost like CPU is the CEO and like GPU is more operational oriented.
Yes,
things.
yes, and even operations and decision making. GPU is that lowest level of worker whose entire job is to take, like in a cooking game context, take a meat from place 1 to place 2. That's it, and they're optimized to do that really, really well, really, really fast, and there are 10,000 of them. That's it.
It's like assembly line.
Correct.
Like as you were describing it, it just made me think of like assembly line. You break the task down in many small pieces, and then one part is just executing the same task over and over again.
And that's exactly what programmers don't get when they are offloading things to GPU. You can't give GPU things to do which needs context switch. The moment you do that, GPU is going to do a terrible job.
So what does that even mean in case of like a processing unit, that there is a context switch or there is a decision making? Like what does that mean?
So for example, matrix multiplication, right? Like I think that's the most common example, right? If you ask a GPU to do matrix multiplication, it will do really well. But if you ask the GPU to do matrix multiplication when the matrix's eigenvalue or some computation is greater than 10, then you do matrix multiplication, otherwise do vector addition, let's say hypothetically, right? If you ask this thing, this if then else thing to do in a GPU, it will do a terrible job. It can't do it because GPU is optimized to do both parts of this branch. The moment you ask it to do one part on this condition and other part on that condition, you're blocking both of those parts. Because that guy there who's taking the meat from one person to another, that person has been asked to do this job. And then if there is a condition, they're going to stop this job, do the next job, right? And he's still waiting there. But if you ask the if then else to happen on the CPU and then have two different guys, two different GPUs doing each of them job, your throughput is going to be better. This is core mental model of GPU programming. And this is something that we were recently explained to someone. And I also learned while I was explaining that, okay, this is a mental model that if every programmer would understand, we would have much more efficient way of programming with GPU, CPU.
So who codes on a GPU? Like who does a GPU coding?
By who do you mean? Like
who person? Like what person?
I mean, any AI engineer is going to.
Okay, so like while AI is very popular and I've heard a lot about it, like a lot of it is still black box, right? Okay, so like let's say I'm building a startup. I have I'm taking ChatGPT and like I'm running calls and stuff. Why do I need an AI engineer? Why can't a normal person just do it?
You don't need an AI engineer if you're not yourself either fine-tuning something or inferencing something. Let me explain what both of them mean, right?
Yes.
Or training. Let's say training.
Yes.
Fine-tuning is a subset of training. Training is the process which created the model that ChatGPT is, right? What does that mean? It means that there is some architecture, let's make architecture the black box. There's some architecture some really smart people have designed, and we have proven that you give X data to it, it is able to do a good prediction on Y data outside the distribution of the X data. This is what a model is. Now, doing this loop of throwing the data at it and making sure that it is performing up to some performance benchmark that we believe in, right, or we need it, that is training. And that is the training part of it. Before the creation of the model, we train it. Inferencing is that, okay, this model is ready. Now, wherever a user comes or whatever, we send some more new data to the model, it will inference the output. That is the inference part. These are the two parts. Both of them use GPUs. So if any of these two, if you have to do, you need to understand GPUs well. Because in each of these, like inferencing is easier to understand. While inferencing is nothing but you give the input to a model. Model is nothing but a complicated network of matrix multiplication of some kind, right? And that gives the output, right? That is what a model is, right? That is inferencing. Now, when you're designing this model or inferencing, there can be some decision making that needs to be made depending on the business logic. That is where the understanding that what decision should a GPU do, what decision should a CPU do, is the inferencing pipeline that the engineer is writing. That is the person who needs to understand this. And of course, there are frameworks that obfuscate this thing for the engineer also of some kind. Then it is the framework designer, like a PyTorch, which is a framework, like a library, which will obfuscate this thing also, but gives you the tools to do this talking with the.
Okay, so how is like doing a API call to something which already exists, right? Like there are many models that already exist, and like how is that different from inferencing? Is it? No.
It is. Like API call means that you are not doing any GPU thing. It's the person serving the API is doing the GPU thing or inferencing. You are asking another server, another person that, okay, dude, this is my input, give me the output. It is like me asking Instagram. When I am opening Instagram, it's the same thing that I am asking the Instagram server to give me my feed. That is also an API call.
Right. So like here, the decision making is on somebody else's head.
Correct. Yes.
But if I host my own model, then
you are doing the inferencing yourself, at least the inferencing yourself.
Correct.
And then you have to understand the integrities of the inference better or more.
So then, like, let's say for example, I used Comfy UI on my system to run something, right?
Right.
But I don't know any of this clearly. I'm just learning right now, right? But like I was able to run it and I was able to inference.
Correct. In all of this, what I talked about, many levels of abstraction that have been built so that different people can optimize different parts of it, right? At the core level, at the base level, it is CUDA, which is NVIDIA's proprietary software, who has abstracted out GPU programming. Okay, the level above that is PyTorch, which is what I said, who has abstracted out understanding of the CUDA. Like the person working on that level doesn't need to understand CUDA, but they can still train models, fine-tune models, and do every CUDA thing without knowing it. Above PyTorch, there would be more libraries. Like in the case of Comfy UI or image, there is something called diffusers, which is a library which has abstracted out image specific things, image model specific things, so that I don't need to care about like how to manage the weights, how to manage the inferencing, how to handle PyTorch level things and decision making, shifting memory, shifting not, all of them. Diffusers does that. Over diffusers, then there would be some like a backend UI or code. Even we work in that level. Dashtune works in that level. Comfy UI works at that level, right? That they have made an interface over diffusers so that you can do some operations, right? Then there is another level, which is where Comfy UI, which has made it super flexible, right? You can move around things and see this operation, that operation, this operation. You can make a node-based graph. Dashtune is different. We are saying you can't do so much flexibility. You do just this part. Like one specific workflow of Comfy UI of some one or two is what Dashtune is.
Did you guys need to tell the models that you're using to not ever generate realistic people? Because I assume that like the base diffuser model actually might be much better at generating real people and real images than not.
Correct. Yes. So which is why we fine tune. Which is why we use fine tunes of, and fine tuning has a different set of nuances of different kinds of fine tuning, but which is why we fine tune. Like we want consistency on the kind of images the model gives me. Like when my user says that I want a style, we call it style. I want this style, which is like a 3D-ish gaming style. We have given it a name. We call it Euler or whatever, right? And then like we will make sure that your fine tune is so good that you will always get that consistent style. That is why we fine tune. Because most of the image generation tools in the world, because you're doing single image generation, you don't care as much about consistency across generations. But for storytelling, we care a lot. So we spend a lot of time to get that this is what we will nail, right? So that is something that is why we fine tune. That's the only reason. Otherwise, we shouldn't be.
Had you done like AI stuff before? Like, had you done AI work before, like you started Dashtune?
I mean, the definition of AI was different, but yes, like most of the time I've spent in my life has been in computer vision for robotics. I used to build aerial robots for competitions in college, or then soccer playing robots, and in all of them also, other than leadership part or operations part, my core expertise was always computer vision. But computer vision has evolved a lot. Like it started with very simple things like edge detection, color detection. Like that was what. And
line follower and all of that.
Correct. So line follower is a application of something like a edge detection or a color detection, right? So we would do very simple things like, okay, this screen or this camera feed can see this much amount of red here. So let's find out where the red is and take a centroid and do things like that and build applications on these things. This was the level 1 of computer vision, which was the state of the art when I started, is 2012. Then came some feature extraction type of things where people made some models like classifiers as to, okay, patterns it can recognize, some kind. Edge is also a pattern of some kind, but people came up with far more complicated patterns. Like, for example, people would start coming up with face detectors, and so it was a pattern, but it was a feature type of a thing. Like, it was nothing but they had trained a model on a lot of faces saying this is a face. It's like a classifier, right?
Yeah.
This is a face. So this is what a face looks like. And you would do it. They were horrible. They were never that.
It used to do that thing, right? Like 2 dots in the eye and 1 at the nose or something.
Correct. Yes. So, facial features is that one thing. Then people defined neural networks. Then when neural networks and convolutional neural networks came, then we got all better. That now we could identify what a dog is. We could identify what a cat is.
This is all in the last 12 years.
Correct. Yeah. Like,
what the
CNNs became mainstream, I think, somewhere in 2015. Maybe 12, actually, 12 to 15. Yeah, but very recent, right? But computer vision had hit a roadblock after a point that none of this was happening really well. There is a competition called ImageNet, which was the state of the art of identify things and all of that. And then came Transformers, which is what changed everything. Like, Transformers started making a lot more things. Transformers with neural networks started making a lot more things, far more applicable. And then we are still discovering things of applications around Transformers. Even in the generative AI space, like LLM was the first use of Transformers, and then diffusion models does not use Transformers. Now there are diffusion Transformers, which is mixing some of that, and we are seeing some more wins, but very early days. Very, very early days. But that is like, I came from that background, since that's when we started the question, right? That I used to do those edge detection, color detection type of things and figure out, okay, this is where my robot should run to, and figure out some smart things around that. That was the start of the computer vision career. From there, now it has come to creating comics. So, but still some amount of computer vision. But it's changed completely. Like, we don't look at feature extraction at all these days. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, like, now also everybody in their phone, if they want, can have like a detector of any kind, right? Like, oh, here is this photo, and then I'll ask GPT, what tree is that? And then it'll tell me also what tree is that.
So I wanted to build a startup which was doing Google Photos, because I had just discovered that this is possible with some computer vision. Then there is a startup called Hyperverge, which is a computer vision company from my batch people only. They built this product. Then Google launched this product and killed them. Right? Like, if something is that valuable, like, and you can, and Google has the access to the photos, it's pretty cool. So but that was the technology that came then, that you can make something like Google Photos, and we did that. Someone did that. So this is 2017. This is still 2017 when Google Photos, we were still evaluating that Google Photos is a good idea, and now it's like part of our life.
I've always felt like, I'm one of that rare generation people where, like, I've seen too many technological revolutions in my lifetime. But
that's true for a lot of us, right? I mean, not me, I guess. I wasn't there during the .com bubble. I was still too young.
I mean, like, there was like computers, and then there was internet, and then there was phones like correct. Smartphones, I mean, and then your entire app universe that sort of came out of it. And then like mobile internet, and like the sort of penetration that it had wherever. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was like so annoyed. She's like, how Swiggy is going to deliver food in 10 minutes. And she's like, this is only possible in India because the income discrepancy is so high, and like this is so useless. It's just interesting that, like, at some point you were seeing like a certain kind of life, and then as you grow within like 30 years, you're like, so much has changed, and now this AI stuff is like, oh, okay. All of that before is trivial.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it just keeps, and then, like, to give your argument that income discrepancy, I think if people want things fast, people will figure it out, even if there is no income discrepancy.
Yeah. I also think, like, in one of the reasons why these kind of things are more feasible in India is like, it's a unique use case. We are very high density. Like, entirety of Bangalore's population is probably the amount of population that many European countries have. Which, like, we're like, yeah, sure. You wouldn't be thinking, oh, this business can't work in Germany, or like this business can't work in France.
I think I usually flip this by thinking that, like, people do want things fast. I think that's human behavior, right? People want. Like when they want gratification ASAP. The question is, someone will innovate even in Germany to give them 10-minute delivery if it is possible, if people realize the need. India realized the need early because it was easier in India than in Germany. Because income discrepancy, because then high dense society, it is easier in India. But I think we will have this in US soon. Someone will solve for it because it is human behavior. If people want things fast, then you give them fast.
Yeah, but like there is enough literature and we know enough about it that instant gratification is not necessarily good in the long term.
It's
It
not
is
about
that
being good in the long term. It is that if you give it, people will incline towards it.
I don't know. I think that a large part of why we are leaning more and more towards it is also because of fracturing social connection. Because, like all of that research around instant gratification is also dependent on that. That, oh, will a mouse take the cocaine or regular water? And it's like, oh, it always takes cocaine water, but not when you throw it in a pool with other mice. Now it's gonna, hang out with people. And I think like a lot of that is, I don't know, the way we are going, a lot of instant gratification need is also because people don't have communities as strongly.
That is true. And yeah, it's probably a bad thing. I don't know. It's bad thing, good thing, hard to say. But it is true. My claim is that it is what people claim to want. So they will get it. Someone will figure out a way to give it.
And in some ways, it's also one of those things where, people wanted faster horses or somebody invented the car. They wouldn't have thought that they can invent cars, but like somebody made the car.
Correct.
In the morning, I was listening to something and they were talking about how the difference between a brand and a commodity is that a commodity has no differentiation apart from the fact that, it has a certain price point and ease of access, right? How do you think about as more and more AI content becomes a thing? There is anyway, social media has commoditized a lot of cultural artifacts. Let me say that. Right. Like, let's say I watch reality shows. Netflix releases a Love is Blind every other week. Like, I'm not even joking. Right. And how do you feel about it now that AI also comes into picture and it accelerates already like a snowball rolling down the hill?
How do I think about
how will that change things? Because there is a commoditization. So there is some amount of value that things have because of the time it takes to build, let's say, comics and stuff, right? Like Superman, Marvel comics, all of these, they have been around for 80 to 100 years. And that's also why they have the capital that they have.
I don't think I get the question fully. That
as in, I'm just wondering, with the increased pace of production, how do you see that changing how people relate with media? So part of it is you're making things, and part of it is also you have, like you said, you have consumed a very particular kind of media with a certain language all your life, and you do deeply connect with it, right? So how do you think about that?
I think one thing that I am fairly sure of, which is what my thesis of my startup is that more people will become creators. That's baseline. That is, I don't think there is any doubt there also, right? It's not a risk. But which also means there'll be more shitty content also, which is also true because everyone does not have
barrier is lower.
That is great because I think that the selection that happens from loads of shitty content to that one content that or few content that stays, they often are really, really good, and they often are far more bigger IPs in a business term and higher shelf life. So we would start seeing more of those bigger IPs happening. That is one, that for sure, because there'll be more content. And second is, I think decentralization will increase, which also means that bigger IPs may not get that big anymore. There may not be as one piece like big IP that often, because you will have 10 one piece like IPs for each niche of each sub cohort of the world, right? So things can't get that big, but people will be more satisfied because they are getting their niche more often. That is what I envision how things will fold out. For example, I think I'm a big fan, like Shah Rukh Khan says, right? I'm last of the stars. He has an interview where he says, I am last of the stars. I really believe he is, because decentralization, as it happens in media, content, anything, right? And it's increasing so much that it is hard to have one big Shah Rukh Khan anymore. We are going to have a lot of Ranbir Kapoors and Ranbir Singhs, and with their niche audiences looking at following them. But it is very hard to have one big star as this keeps happening.
Okay, so I don't follow Bollywood at all, right? So I don't know the scale difference apart from the fact that like Shah Rukh Khan has had a very, let's say, rich life in terms of like how long he has been a creator and how many films then he has produced as well. Like it's been a long time, but like all of these other guys are younger, right? They haven't had the amount of time also. What's the difference?
Right. So I think the difference is the pull that one person can bring.
You were saying no more Rajnikant, no more Amitabh Bachchan, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is that hard because people have access to more content now. Because people have access to varying content, varying platforms, the distribution has become so decentralized, right? Let's forget Shah Rukh Khan, generation before that, right? There was only one way to connect with your actor. There was only one way to get the content that you like. You go to a movie theater and you will see that a Devanand or Amitabh Bachchan or a Shami Kapoor, you get them, you connect with them, right? And people had emotional connects
Amitabh
with those people. They made their emotional connects with those people, right? So they built a following around it and then they grew. So 50% of the content following came from them and around 50%, or whatever that number, I'm coming up with a random number right now, but there was X and Y content that following that came from them and some from the story. And when there is a great story and a great mass following person, you would see a super duper hit.
You get a Sholay.
Yeah, you get a Sholay. Right. Although Sholay did not work when it first launched, but
Oh, it didn't? I didn't know that.
It was, it didn't. It was relaunched is when it worked.
Oh.
But anyway, coming back to this is what happened then. Now in the era of a Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Amir Khan, this went a little decentralized, not as much, but little decentralized. But what also happened is that there was more money flown into the market because content became bigger. There were more directors, more money. India became slightly richer, and there were more people who would spend on content. Discretionary income increased of people and all of that. So they saw a huge wave, and we saw like the golden period of Bollywood, as I would call it, right? That there was really, really amazing content out there. People would watch and all of that. But the moment OTTs have come in, now people...
Last 10 years.
Yeah, last 10 years, right? Now consumers have more options. And they will not compromise ki yaar, this is what is out there. So my entertainment has to happen by going to a movie theater. And now I have more options. I can watch a movie on Netflix. I can watch a YouTube video on YouTube. I can go and sit on Instagram and watch reels. I can do all of this. So now the bar for me connecting with a content piece has increased. Now I don't connect with a Ranbir Kapoor as much. I probably connect more with my story, my audience, my creator. Like I probably connect with Kumar Varun. He makes quizzing, right? If given a choice, will I watch an average Bollywood movie on going to a theater versus watching a 1 hour quizzing with Kumar Varun? I'll choose a Kumar Varun because I don't want to watch an average Bollywood. So the bar has increased a lot. So now, because that I have so many options and my bar has increased so much, those actors which used to get X following has reduced. That X has reduced massively because now I don't connect with that actor as much. I probably want a better story. I probably connect with the creator like Kumar Varun also. I probably want to create with creator Ranbir Kapoor also. But now Ranbir Kapoor can't become 10x because I have 10 options.
Interesting. I wonder that's also probably why like a lot of stand-up comics have become popular because they are doing this like very niche kind of comedy and they're talking to a very specific, like each one is talking to a very specific crowd. But then there is enough of that. I think it was Zig Ziglar who said 10,000 true fans are all that you need. And like I wonder like if that's what you are also trying to say, that like the ceiling has been also reduced. Like,
correct. Yeah. So I do believe that this happened in the West far before. Like in India, even today, a Shah Rukh Khan movie makes more money than many other movies because of the following of Shah Rukh Khan. In the West, that skew has reduced already. Like a Tom Cruise movie does not bring in as much audience easily. Like Tom Cruise has to also make a great movie. Right? The West saw this slightly earlier. The starification or the star power reduced slightly earlier because they already had so many
options.
Yeah, they already had. India started seeing this way recently. And that's when it's going to happen.
Interesting, because like now that I'm also thinking about like other things, maybe earlier like non-Hindi films would not gain any traction with Hindi audience.
Correct.
I mean, so many people have told me like, let's say about that Malayalam movie Great Indian Kitchen,
Yeah.
like you must watch it, right? But like it's a Malayalam film. I cannot think like even 15 years ago somebody telling me to watch a Malayalam film.
Yeah, that's what, because distribution was so limited, like
Controlled.
controlled. Like cable TV was the one distribution of old movies, and you don't control that. And theaters was the distribution for the new movies, which also you don't control. So if the power has gone more to the consumer, they will choose what they like more.
Interesting.
That is something that AI will supercharge it, right? That if I can make a really good story and put it out there, I'll become popular. Will I become Shah Rukh Khan? No, but I can get somewhere, right? I'm saying no one can become Shah Rukh Khan.
Interesting. Or maybe like people whose sole job is to create content to create parasocial relationships. Like let's say people like Joe Rogan or Andrew Tate, or like I can only think of these like people like very extremist right now, but like their whole shtick is that they want to create a parasocial relationship with their viewers or consumers, and maybe like they become that kind of big. Maybe not that like not Shah Rukh Khan big, but yeah,
It's very hard to become a Shah Rukh Khan big in a new world now. Very, very hard. Very, very unlikely. And with I'm claiming this also, a new claim, that even with this, no one can become a Narendra Modi big also after a few years. The moment politicians start understanding that this is the way to market to your audience, like BJP nailed that marketing better than anyone else, right? They nailed it. So, and they nailed it with the face of Narendra Modi. But the moment people realize that I get to choose my politician, again, that will get decentralized. And that should happen. It is the right way to live. Again, my claim.
No, it's interesting because like that's also making me think about, in a very squeezed time frame, something similar happened with K-pop. So BTS and Blackpink were the first wave of internationalization of K-pop that happened during COVID time, right? So 2020 BTS and Blackpink, like they shoot up the sky and people are like, everybody around the world is their fan. Now, more people listen to K-pop, but there isn't any more BTS.
Correct.
Or like you wouldn't find one person that like, oh, everybody is just a fan of this band.
Exactly. And Taylor Swift is another example. Will we have another Taylor Swift? I don't think so. Very hard.
Yeah, it's gonna be insane.
Very hard. Or you can be that good. Maybe you have to be the bar to be good has to be that good to be that big.
But like, don't you also feel like some of it is just like these are black swan events? Being a Rajnikant or being a Shah Rukh Khan or being a Taylor Swift is a black swan event. Like it's very hard to get there.
It was already so hard. Now it's gonna get 10x harder or 100x harder. I don't know the number, but it is gonna get harder. Bollywood is going through this, if you follow enough interviews, is going through this identity crisis that actors are not getting in enough audience, great directors are not getting in enough audience consistently. Then what will get enough audience? So my claim is that
good stories,
but then it will still not be that big, right? If you make a non-massy story which is really good, it will get a non-massy audience. It will get that audience. But you have to make money of retention and not of acquisition. Like you have to get that sticky audience again and again and again and again, which is what all app companies have already understood this, that it is the retention that matters. You can solve acquisition in different ways, but it is the retention that matters. Like Bollywood needs to look at that.
I think, but even saying something like, oh, Shah Rukh Khan brings in a lot of people or Rajnikant brings in a lot of people, that is also a retention thing only, na?
Correct, it is. But the problem is that
who is retaining is different. Like the relationship that is being retained is, the focus is different. Yes. Here there's a person, and what you're saying is now it's going to be a little more ephemeral than that.
Yeah, it's going to be more content driven. It's going to be more, much harder to have it person driven. It will be content driven, that I like action movies and I want my niche of action movies every Friday. Someone has to make an action movie for me every Friday. Otherwise, I will not retain. Simple. And this is something we notice in our users also. So it's very interesting that we make romance daily soaps practically. Right? That is our core content. Romance daily soaps. The moment we try to shift our acquisition to something even slightly different from romance daily soaps, we see a massive drop in our retention or whatever. average revenue per paying user, we see a massive drop. Because if my content is all romance and my acquisition content is not romance, then they will not move around shows. And if they don't move around shows, I'll make less money.
How do you not pigeonhole yourself in that case? Because like after some point, people are also gonna get bored. Like that point will come, right?
Correct. Which is why the emotional journey of my user is this, right? Usually that, okay, I saw this ad on Insta. I like this. I clicked on it, and now I want to read this. I want to know what happens at the end of the story. That is the emotion that the user is. They went through that story. Then they are going to be like, okay, I want the next story. And more often than not, they want a similar story. They don't want to explore. Most people don't want to explore very early. After 3, 4, 5 stories, they're going to be like, okay, now can I think about more? This platform has built my trust. They're giving me this quality bar. And then they're going to explore. I mean, my company is not there to get to a 5th, 6th show. So right now, the pigeonhole is the goal for us. But at some point, yes, like Netflix. Very interestingly, there is a Netflix data also, right? That the long tail is what retains users. The acquisition is what gets users. Like it's a Sacred Games or a reality show. That
Love is Blind.
Love is Blind. Love is Blind. Those are acquisition shows. They're gonna spend tons of money in those acquisition shows. But if you don't get things like Love is Blind every week, every month, or whatever that you like, you will not retain on Netflix, right? But Netflix ensures that that tiny cohort of Love is Blind user also has enough content, and be the massy Hindi film movie.
I mean, Love is Blind is also not
content.
tiny cohort, okay? That is also massive cohort.
I'm sure I don't know how big the cohort is, but I'm saying there is each cohort Netflix is able to address to really well. And that is insane amount of content that they are able to do. Insane. And it's very hard.
And it's amazing that, like, alongside creating stuff like Love is Blind, which, let's be honest, like is not very finessed content, right? I love it, but like, it's not finessed content. They are also able to sort of invest in content like Arcane, which I would say is on the other end of like, front edge of, okay, what can content actually be, the ceiling bar. So it's interesting that like, they are able to do both of those things.
Yeah, yesterday we met someone who used to run Hotstar, right? And which is like a platform, not Netflix big, but decently big, right? The core job of the content person is to understand the emotion this content creates in the user. And a person has many emotions, like, and in different moods, they have different emotions, different things. But a person also has a default emotion, that this is what the emotion that a person mostly likes, right? So you want to acquire on that kind of a content, and then you want to retain by giving them slightly similar but different, and keep nudging and rotating them in the same type of content, right? For example, when you think about this is not totally counterintuitive, right? On a Saturday, like I'm emotionally more susceptible to start a TV show, but on a Monday night or a Tuesday night, I will not start. I won't. You cannot. Please give me something that I know what is going to happen. And Netflix has nailed that thing down really well. That when to show what, and they do think that deeply.
I'm sure.
They do think that deeply.
I'm 100% sure. Like I remember, when I was watching a lot of K-dramas and I was watching these romance reality shows, Netflix started pushing like these content which are Asian reality shows on romance to me. And I was like, my response was, they know me so well. It is amazing.
Theme music is by Akshay Ramuhali of BTRPT Music. Editing is by Beatnik.